Started. Well, folks, welcome back. I'm happy to be back with the Aligning Success Call. We are now almost midway through the month of November. Just for clarity, let's see, we are on the 13th of the month. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it looks like on my calendar. So I just got back from Panama City, or actually Panama Jungle, the Gamboa Resort, which was along the canal, watching all the boats go by. And I was there to work with and celebrate the Diamond Seminario, which is an annual event hosted by Niken Corporate in Latin America for all the Latinos who have met new qualifications and who wanted to participate in this excursion. The requirement was they had to be gold and above. And so we had a number of celebrations, including new diamonds, royal diamonds, and an opportunity for me to work directly with the diamonds and royal diamonds. The information that I shared with them was very pertinent to where they're at as a grouping. More specifically, the royal diamonds, who are now embarking on, they're hitting sort of the top of the expression of royal diamond. And how do you expand? You have to keep growing, right, as a person. And so what I helped them understand a little bit more clearly was the concept of the rhythm of the business, which they fully embody and fully embrace in Latin America. They have taken that on to the nth degree, with the exception of one final tier, and that's where I come in. That final tier is taking leaders from being international leaders to being global leaders. So what's the difference? Well, as you grow your business through the ranks, silver through to royal diamond, it's really a business of managing and organizing your business, your organization. And the purview of your business usually takes you, as a royal diamond, for instance, that's kind of an international business. If we profile the royal diamonds in Niken, you'd see that many of them have businesses in multiple countries, but not all the entire footprint of Niken. Diamonds have the footprint, majority of their business in one country. Platinums, majority of their business in a region. Gold's the majority of their business in a town or a city. And silver's just local. Executives, of course, their business is pretty much right now in their home or their living room or their bedroom. So you can see it's really the expansion of an awareness going from a personal, taking on the role of being involved in active wellness personally, then promoting it locally, then municipally, then regionally, then nationally, then internationally, and then finally is global. So the global concept was what I was there to share with them and describe and have them have a better appreciation of, because we're now in the throes of creating a unification of Niken in all three major markets, which from the corporate side means the integration of their computer technology so that there is one global footprint for Niken. I'm just going to mute some background noises here. And so the company is doing what they have to do corporately in order to start moving the vision of Niken toward a more global vision and global footprint. But the field has to also be migrating in that direction. So with that was formed a new organization, a new team, Team Niken Global. And that is now going to be extended to North America and Europe among those who are pertinent to that vision, who want to be part of that globalization. And why it started with Latin America primarily is because a lot of focus and attention and growth is there, the momentum is there. And so we want to import some of that and provide them some a landing pad, if you will. So that's one of the agendas that I'll be taking up in 2018, is providing them a landing pad in North America, starting in Toronto, by the way. So you'll be hearing about events that are taking place or that are going to be taking place in Canada that are focused events, which primarily target the Latino community, but of course are not closed events, but they will have that flavor. We want to have a number of people come in from Latin America to support that agenda, and they have already agreed to that. So that was sort of laying a foundation for those of you who are familiar with Launch Partners. Launch Partners was the beginning of that process, but that was more centered on the North American market, where this is sort of an extension of that concept on a larger scale to an audience of people that are in Latin America. So it's great for them, it's great for us, and it's the beginning of a Nikken global footprint with the cross promotion and the sharing, not only of the energy, but also the collateral materials. So I've been given access to that material by Luis Kasuga. So I'm working very closely now with him in the global expansion of Nikken. Sort of kind of a weird thing to think about, Nikken expanding from Latin America to North America, but it makes kind of sense. And as I explained it to them, there was a point in time where we were, when I first launched Nikken in Mexico, it was me coming from Toronto down to Mexico, and that triggered the events that subsequently resulted in about 80% of that room being people in my organization. So working backwards now, they want to do the same in the opposite direction. And so that creates that bridge. And now what we have is a much stronger Nikken and an energy infusion from that market, which I can tell you, man, they know how to party, those guys. They love music. They love to dance. They are a lot of fun to be with, and they're very, very professional. So we have tons to benefit from our future interactions with them as they help us shore up and move into new market spaces, if you will, even a more younger, energetic audience as well. So that's kind of what my mission was for that market. And if you have questions later, we can get into that. But what I did want to focus tonight on was the difference between process and strategy. It's come up in a few conversations now, where I think it's an important thing for me to make a clear distinction on. Now, I know in a previous call we did have such a discussion where we were clear about what's the difference between process and strategy, but a few people have just joined the call, and it's certainly worth revisiting, so we understand that as a number of you are now starting to move into momentum. A number of you have now recruited. By the way, 3 months in a row, double-digit recruiting numbers in Nikken is a very positive indicator that the movement that began some months back in January, I guess, is picking up steam. And while I mentioned that it is something that began earlier, not all things can be pointed to, or not one thing can be attributed to what's happening here. It's a collage. It's the contribution of many people and many minds, and of course the effectiveness of the people who are actually applying what they're learning. So congratulations to you guys all, because you're all part of that, and I'm happy about that. So if you've got some questions, hold them for the end, and then let me just get through this information, then we'll come back to what's going on, what's current in your reality. So give me a second here while I switch gears to share my screen. Okay, so some of you have seen this. Let's see, I have one out. Okay, this piece here comes from this PowerPoint. And so this is one of our working tools. By the way, interesting, I don't know if you saw my Facebook post, maybe you didn't, but the launch partner certainly saw. One of their top Royal Diamonds out of Colombia was holding up a tool that she holds up as a one-on-one. So what was interesting is she was holding up something about this size, and it was, of course, the 5 pillars. In fact, it was this very 5 pillars. So something that was very important for her to express in her time on stage with the field reps was that this is the beginning of the process. It's that discussion about the value of the 5 pillars in someone's life. And so it is a universal concept. It is the vision of Nikken. It is why Nikken was born. It's the one thing through time in the 42 plus years that has not changed. And it's the one thing that won't change regardless of products, regardless of compensation plan, regardless of demographics, regardless of IT. It's why we exist. And so it's only natural that we would lead with that, since that is the why. So let me get started here. So our process is about taking somebody who knows absolutely zero, nada, about Nikken, to having enough information that they can make a decision. And when I mean enough information, I'm talking about they have been through a process where we can call them a partner. So we've got to define what we mean by that, because otherwise we don't know how much information is enough information. So what do we mean by a partner? Well, in the language we use, a partner is somebody who's committed to launch their business for the next 90 days, which, by the way, is exactly how they focus things in Latin America. They have focused 90-day plans, and they repeat them every 90 days, and they coincide them with events. Now, what does it take to actually launch your business? An investment of time, money, and contacts. Of course, that's our $1 million list here, which is our contact list. The time is the time it takes to contact and invite people into this process, and the money is the investment that they make in products for personal use, products for demonstration use, etc. The money is essentially products. So a little bit of time, a little bit of money, and a few contacts with the right energy and the right input can lead to freedom of time, freedom of money, and a network that spans the globe. That's how we roll. So the idea is a snowflake becomes a snowball, becomes a snowman, if you can visualize that concept. But it starts with something. You have to see there's a kernel of this, and the kernel is those little things that we so if somebody's not putting in the time, money, or contacts, all three, then they're going to fall short because they've changed the recipe. So now what information is necessary for a person to say, it's worth my time, it's worth an investment of money, and I'm willing to expose my credibility to my contact list and the credibility of this idea. So what would they need in order to be able to have that kind of a decision made? And not only that, but we're going to focus for 90 days as a team to create a launch. So the information in principle never changes. It's why, how, what, and in that order. The why conversation is why we're talking, why we're going to even entertain any possibility, let alone this possibility, and that generates interest. We move a contact from being just a contact on our names list to someone who's now interested in knowing more. Then what we need to do is show them how our idea, how our concept can actually realize that why. Whatever that why might be. For them, it might be personal freedom, time freedom, family, whatever those 5 pillars, whatever are the points in those 5 pillars that are needs for them. We have to show them how we can fill those needs by presenting the concept of Niken. So the why conversation is not about Niken. The why conversation is about the philosophy of the 5 pillars, the idea of creating a balanced life. Niken, that conversation is the how conversation. That's all the moving parts, the business, the products, and the system, from which a person's starting to get an idea as to whether they're leaning towards being a customer or leaning towards being a consultant with us. But it isn't over yet, because they may have made a decision at that point to be a consultant, or they may have made a decision at that point to just be a customer. But there's still one piece of information that remains to be had in order for us to be sure that they know the difference between what a customer is, what a consultant is, and what a partner is. And that piece of information is the what conversation. The what conversation is what it takes to build a successful Niken business. Because at that point, they can see how it fits, how the moving parts fits, and how they can fit it into their life. So every step of this process, what's important is it communicates the information, but we want to do it in a way that's as simple as possible, efficient as possible, and duplicatable as possible, because from the second we open our mouth, we are teaching them what it takes. I'll give an example of this. So I'm having a conversation with somebody, and we talk about the McDonald's M1, M2, M3, you know, the concepts of McDonald's, how we earn money in McDonald's, either retail or through franchising or through the real estate concept. And shortly after that, the person mentioned something to do with setting up in a booth in a health show. Now, where did their mind immediately go? It wasn't the real estate business of McDonald's. It wasn't even the franchise business. It was straight on retail, you know. So the leads that would be generated at such an event are people who are now being told by virtue of what they're seeing at that event is that in order for you to be a successful Nikin consultant, you need to have a booth at a health show. That's going straight into the subconscious mind, regardless of what you said or what you say. That's what they're seeing, and that's what gets registered. So your lead generation at an event like that is most likely going to be product leads or customer leads and not business leads. So don't confuse what part of the business you're involved in. Keep that in mind. So when we talk about the what, it's important that they know there are those three aspects to our business. There is the retail, and that looks a certain way. There is the franchise, and that looks a certain way. And then there's the big picture, which leads to lifestyle and freedom, and that's building a network organization, and that looks a certain way. So that's really what the what conversation entails and shows them how their time, money, and contacts go to work for them. Now, just to repeat, the first creates interest. The second step builds their belief in the possibility that Nikin is really a vehicle. And by the way, anything you can do to build belief in that step, product demos are going to go a long way. So, and then finally, the activation. What does it take to activate your business and really get it off the ground? So those are the three conversations that we talk about. Whether you take 5 minutes, well, I doubt you're going to do it in 5 minutes, but whether you do it in 50 minutes or you do it in 3 days, the bottom line is make sure you are following where a person is at in the process. And if you're going to bring in an A, excuse me, if you're going to bring in an A to do an ABC, be sure to let the A know where in the process are you so they know what they need to do, because their job as an A is to move them further down the road of that process. So the process is that line that we've just shown you here. So that zigzag line. That would be, and there's one more step in this process before we really, really wrap this up, and that is cement it. Let's lock it in. Where a person goes from being mentally in the idea to emotionally in the idea. Now, a lock-in event can be any number of things. It could be an amazing product demonstration that happens that changes them from being somebody who gets the idea mentally to somebody who's passionate about the idea emotionally. Most likely, more often than not, it's at an event of some kind, whether it's an online event or an in-person event, where they have an opportunity now to meet and greet people of stature, people who have made money in this as a business. See, the lock-in event, notice where it's positioned. It's the what it takes to succeed. So what's the message you want to drive home in that stage is what it takes to succeed, and then to show them what that success looks like through people. So ABCs. And so a lock-in event, the larger the event, the more impactful the event has on this part of the equation. Unfortunately, they don't happen often enough. And so what we're orienting ourselves now around is a monthly event that we're going to host as A's online. We're going to call it a Power ABC or a Power A call, whatever we're going to call it. But the idea is that if we have an event with regularity, if you in your local area have an event with regularity where you can tap into this A, this super A, then what you'll have is some powerful people with a powerful message to affirm and confirm that everything they've heard in this process from the very beginning to the activation stage, everything they're hearing is real, that people do change their lives, and to the degree that they do based on how long they've been in the business and the business that they built. So we're going to host a monthly lock-in event to help you wrap up this process that began with that first conversation. So hopefully by the end of a month, or what we would call a cycle, you have people who are now wanting to partner with you. Some of them will partner with you. Some of them will just be consultants. Some of them will just be customers, and some will just refer you to that next person. So this is process. It's like if I was cooking one noodle of spaghetti, I would have to boil the water, I would have to put some salt in the water. I'd have to put the noodle in the water. I'd stir it around a bit. I'd monitor it until it was al dente. Then I would strain it, and then I would put it in a plate and maybe mix it with some sauce, and now it's ready to go. But of course, you understand that if you did this, it would take you an awful long time to prepare a meal for yourself, let alone a meal for 5 or 10 people. We can't cook one noodle at a time. By the time you get the last noodle on the plate, all the other noodles will be dead cold and it'll be awful. So how do we apply strategy to this? If process is a necessary thing that people need to go through so that they can make the mental and emotional shifts to make a decision to get involved, if we're launching somebody as opposed to just kind of doing our Nikken business haphazardly, if we're actually engaging in a launch with the goal of helping somebody advance in rank, then we need to have more than just process under our belt. We need to have some strategy. In other words, how many people should we be putting through this process, and in what time frame should we make that happen? And then how do we manage that? How do we manage multiple people going through a process at various stages all at the same time within 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks? And so let's just look at this as a strategy now, working backwards. If the objective, the ultimate objective, is to have, let me just get myself a remote control. No, that's not it. I'm not able to access what I want to do, but it's okay. I'll just keep going this way. So take a look at the right-hand side. The number 3 appears underneath the word partner. If the objective is to find our 3 partners, and this shouldn't be a surprise because our strategy chart certainly tells us our objective is 3, right? If our objective is to find 3 partners, what's the time frame? You want it this month, next month, over the next 3 months? Like what? You have to start with the end in mind. So in a launch strategy, you want to know what's the outcome and what's the time frame. So let's say it's 3 inside of a month. That would be ideal because now we're starting to be able to meet a pace that would enable us to not only rank advance, but take advantage of some of the Nikken's incentives like the Entrepreneurs Club and some of the other incentives that are in play this year. So let's look at that. 3 people who commit to being a partner. Well, if we're going to have 3 people commit to being a partner, traditionally we know that it takes more people than 3. And so we actually have to have 9 people join us as consultants. And that in turn results in 3 people who really run at the pace of partner. And that's just human nature. In other words, I'd rather play a game knowing what the rules of the game are than not know what the rules and never know if I'm hitting the target. So this is how we know. The rule of thirds is a super rule because it's consistent. If I enroll 9 people inside of a month, 3 of those people will be running at the speed that I'm hoping they'd be running at as a partner come next month. Another 3 of those 9 will be sort of doing it medium, and the last 3, and I'm not sure which 3 is going to do what, but the last 3 will probably be moving very, very slow. So when we're looking for a launch, we're looking for partners. We're looking for running mates, people to run with us. Because the goal is to lead the pack, not be behind the pack like mother hen trying to push the hens along. That's not how we build. What we want to do is we want to run, and we want to find some runners who run with us. So now, of the 9 people who become consultants, obviously they're going to generate some volume because they're going to purchase some products. But not only 9 people joined you, that means probably 9 people who are also customers, because to arrive at 9 on that part of the equation, we need some 27 who are at least interested. 27 people, again, the rule of thirds, who say, tell me more, who want more information, who want to understand this, will lead to 9 who say, sign me up, will lead to 9 who purchase products, and will lead to 9 who at the very least say, you know what, you should be talking to so-and-so, or you should have, et cetera, et cetera. They'll refer you. So that's what is a reasonable expectation, by the way. These are all reasonable expectations. But I tell you, these reasonable expectations come if the intro, if the contact and invite step is adhered to. And we've talked about this on the March 27 Aligning with Success call. that call is designed so that this process and the numbers in this process stay on key, on point. And if you don't follow that process, then you're not setting up the conditions for this process to be as successful as it could be. And that call basically lays it out. How do I make that initial call so that that call will lead to an appointment? Because of the 27 people that I need interested right away, I need to make a certain number of calls because not everybody's available. How many calls is it going to take to ensure that I have the 27 people who want to meet with me? Well, if you're prepared to do 81 calls, all within a certain time frame, you're going to find those 27. Those 27 will lead to the 9, and those 9 will lead to the 3. Now, if this was $1 million plan, and I can assure you it is, what would you call your contact list? You'd probably call it the $1 million list. And so how valuable is that list, and how important is it to generate a list of names? Obviously, if you don't have the names, you won't have the interested contacts in the time frame you need them. If we're working this backwards to find 3 in a month, then you can see that this is going to require some focus, some attention. So now how do we manage the flow of this, the flow of traffic, if you will, of people in the process? Well, break it down in terms of daily, weekly, and monthly. So every day, if you look inside the Create Interest Circle, that's a daily thing. We contact people every day. How many do we need to contact every day so that this process can be completed in 30 days? Well, the general rule is about 5 or 6 calls will lead to 2 appointments. And so if you're doing that 5 days a week, that's 10 appointments. And now you have to decide, am I seeing those 10 people one at a time, or a combination of one at a time and maybe an in-home where I meet them together? So every week you need to figure out, how do I manage to meet with these people? Do I meet them on 2 or 3 occasions? Or, do I meet them giving them 1 or 2 or 3 opportunities to meet with me at lunch, at dinner, in the evening? Now you've got to actually have a calendar. Now you see why having a calendar becomes relevant, because you're not going to be able to manage this if you're not scheduling it. I know one couple that schedules all their meetings, all their appointments on one night a week. That's how they've been building their business. They built their business to gold in 3 months, just with one appointment, one night a week. They wrap it all into that. They funnel all that into that one meeting. So it's doable, and you have to decide how you want to do it. Now, we have to conclude this month. And so the conclusion of the month is with an event, a lock-in event, where by the end of the month, they have seen everything there is to see, and a decision will have been made to join the team and to what capacity they will have joined. So those are what we refer to as the rhythms of the business, or the rhythm of the business. So now we know there's daily contact and invite. There's at least 1 or 2 or 3 meetings per week in order to handle the traffic of people. And this is in launch mode, folks. Remember, we're not talking about maintenance mode. We're talking about getting someone's business off the ground. So yes, it's important to focus, and it's important to corral their energy and their time into those little windows. So that requires planning. So before we even engage this launch, there's going to need to be a bit of planning. When is your month event going to happen? When is, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a launch plan. Now, what if you tried this and it didn't work so well the first time? You might learn something that you will then apply the next time. And pretty soon, guess what will happen? You'll start getting really good at this. You'll understand the information flow, you'll understand process, you'll understand strategy, and you'll be able to help people get way further down the path of Nikan than you have, maybe even yourself. And so I just decided a long time ago I would learn one thing and learn how to do it well. And this is the one thing I've learned, and this is how I've learned to do it. So you can do it, and you can do it well, and you can get better at it. That's our 30-day strategy, and our process for getting people through that strategy. So any questions about this? Let's open that up. Unmute yourself if you will, please.
Very clear and very timely, Mike. Thank you. Good review again.
If you have a question, jump in. I'm going to just show you what happens if we follow a strategy month 1, month 2, month 3. So let's say the investment of money that we're looking for is 100 points in auto ship and 500 points overall per person that we enroll in the business. That's a very reasonable strategy. Besides, there's the power incentive, where if they do 500 points for the first 3 months, 500 each month, they're going to get their enrollment fee back. So we've got the incentive for that, but that's not really why we do it. It's just a good business plan. So let's look at this. We have five people on this number, only because the circles, I guess, couldn't fit more. But anyway, think about that chart that we just saw. Out of the people that we contact, invite, present, there's going to be a number of customers. But some of those customers are going to be more than just customers. They're going to become partners. And so at the completion of that cycle, we should have a number of customers and at the very least 3 partners, because that's been the focus. Those 3 partners at 500 points and advances you to executive, or advances them to executive. Now, what happens if we now work with those partners in month number 2 to duplicate that launch? Now, you might need 3 homes, 1 in each home, or you might combine the homes so that you're doing it 1 in one person's home, 1 in another, or you might go public. I don't know. At some point in time, I had to go public because I couldn't fit the number of people in my home. And that was very quick for me because I ran a very accelerated pace. So that's why people have meetings in public places. It's because there's more people coming than they can handle in a smaller environment. So the public event is a result of somebody growing their business. So now these 3 people, these 3 partners in this drawing here, they go out and we help them launch, which means they essentially do exactly the same. Now, with this strategy, we've advanced to silver. That's the 3 by 3, teach 3 to reach 3. And of course, we show customers there because they're going to contribute to the overall volume. They're going to contribute to the overall picture of our business. We don't want to not show them because they are a very important part of our business, and we want to get that in our head day 1. Now, I'm going to show you a different strategy. Oh, sorry, let me just jump that. Month 3. So if month 3 went without a hitch and we duplicated that 1 more generation, you're gold. So you can see you're 3-4 months into this, and gold is more than doable if you're following a plan, and to the degree that you follow it and teach others to do the same. So that's the key to a successful duplication process. I want to show you something. This is really cool. What happens if we get in our head 500 points is not the volume that we're looking to target? Instead, we're looking to do 1,500 points. That's what we want our business partners to generate in volume. And quite frankly, most of you on this call would agree that it doesn't take much to hit 1,500 points in NECAN. I mean, even if you were just looking at a sleep system and a water system, you're at 1,500 points. So that would be a very good combination. And most importantly, that combination of products has the highest impact on someone's well-being. If we're trying to build their belief and confidence in this as a business, then the first thing we want to really do is build their belief and confidence in the products and their own personal experience of that or someone else's. So what is the 1 product or 2 products that I know hits every system of the body? Every system of the body is affected by water and sleep. So I know I've got maximum impact with water and sleep. And if this is a business person I'm working with, they're investing in this as a business. It's not an expense. Okay, so now 3 people who become partners, generating 1,500 points each, and bang, in 1 month, right there, you're silver. Let's duplicate that. Your gold in month 2, hit the Paragon, and in month 3, your platinum. All this is made possible because you have a plan. You'll notice what that plan was. It was a process, it was a strategy, and it includes also this component, what is the volume that we want to do where our partners are concerned. That's also a choice. Are we going to focus on 500 or are we going to focus on 1,500? Now, of course, you get the mix, but if you have some options, you can work this business at one pace, or you can accelerate the pace of your advancement just by that one adjustment. Expectations. What is the volume you expect your partners to generate when they get involved? And 1,500 points is not too much when you consider the product mix. If we were talking about a company that only had cosmetics, maybe that might be a lot. But there are even cosmetics companies that do that as an expectation. If we were talking about a company that had maybe a juice or some type of thing, that might be excessive because that's a lot of juice bottles. But believe it or not, they even have those packages to offer their business builders, their partners. We don't. All we have is a recommendation. So I'm making my recommendation that you start people off with either the water, that 500-point pack, which is the waterfall and the sports bottle, or the combination of the water and sleep technology, so you get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of effect, impression on that person, which is going to go the distance. Then when you start duplicating that methodology in a process and in a strategy, you can see how this starts to multiply. So I'm just feeding you some information today that takes this little diagram here and this diagram to another level, helps you understand some of the numbers you want to be plugging into this and some of the expectations associated with that. All right. Any thoughts, any questions, folks?
This was really helpful, Mike. I mean, I've heard it all before, but it just all together, and it just seems like it's clear.
Good. I hope you keep that one thought in your mind, whether you're cooking a noodle or you're cooking a meal. The idea of process versus strategy. You need both if you're going to prepare a meal for 1 or a meal for 5 or a meal for 50. You still need the process to cook the noodles, but now you need a little bit of strategy. You know, it doesn't take much planning, really, to cook a meal for 1. But if you got 50 people coming over, that's going to take some thinking. You're going to have to plan this out. You know, how much water do you have to boil? How many pots do you need on the oven at the same time, etc. That's the difference. And most people are taught in our business process. You almost never hear strategy. Almost never hear strategy. And yet, the ones who have accelerated their growth, the ones who have made big strides in the business, had a strategy. They may have already intuited the process or knew the process from any previous experience they had, but strategy is how you turn process into results. It's one thing to sponsor one person, but when you then help that person sponsor one person, and then they sponsor one person, that's, you know, to some degree, I guess, a strategy, but it's a very slow one. And we talk about teach 3 to reach 3, and when are we going to do that? So how about you focus on finding your 3, bang. Then you can focus on helping them find their 3. And so it's kind of like having babies in diapers all at the same time. You don't want to be 50 or 60 years old changing diapers. So have them all at once, you know, boom, 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 boom. And then you got them and you raise them together. And then there's siblings and there are rivalries and there's this and that and whatever, but you have family outings and so forth. That's kind of the same concept. Yes, go ahead. Question. Carol.
I do have a question. Sorry. Go ahead.
I see Carol, and then we'll ask whoever was on audio to ask that question. Go ahead.
Okay, so you were talking about drilling down.
Yep.
You know, like you get one and then you start drilling down. What I hear you saying now is go for the 3 and then drill down.
Well, the concept of drilling down is your partners. You want to find, I'm going to personally be involved personally. So there's what you're talking about is tap rooting versus
Okay.
launch. Okay, so they're two different concepts. Launching is launching, but then what? I want to taproot, which means I want to find somebody under somebody as quickly as possible. So if I set in motion a person in their launch, where their focus is, let's find some people, 2 or 3 people and key people in width, what am I doing? Besides being an aid to that, I'm looking to help anyone that comes into the program early on to find theirs. So let's say in week 1 of this launch, somebody comes on board and says, I'm in. Well, while my person is out doing their contact and inviting, I'm going to focus on that one person that says I'm in, because now they need to set up and launch. They now need to find somebody. So I'm going to focus on them as if they were somebody I personally sponsored. Okay? So, and then same thing. What happens in week 2 if they sponsor somebody, and the first person I launched has got a second person? Well, where do I focus? I'm going to focus on that leg straight down. That's going to be 100% of my attention. Treat them as if I sponsored them, because I'm going to taproot that leg. That accelerates everybody's business above, because now there's vested interest before I move on to somebody else. So we're talking about 2 different strategies, but having somebody focus on the activities of a launch is really, really key, because it takes a little bit of thinking, it takes a little bit of planning. And so I kind of like that. I like, if I have to travel, for instance, to a city, then how do I apply myself? It has to be with someone that I'm launching. Otherwise, how often do I have to travel to that city, one noodle at a time? It's not very efficient. So why should I limit it to just a city? It could be across the street. Why one noodle at a time? Let's do this. I can, help that person find their aces a lot quicker if they were moving through the deck of cards a lot faster. And then overlaying on that is this concept of, once I know I've got one, now let me focus on that one. Focus on that one. That's the taproot. 2 different ideas, both working at the same time, but one precedes the other. The launch precedes the taproot.
I'll listen to this again and hopefully I'll understand.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Okay. Any other question? I heard another person asking something.
The other person was Rennie.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, this is an elementary question, but it's one I'm concerned about because I never really successfully did this before. And that is when you're talking about getting people interested in the water system and sleep system, like together. I agree it's a high impact combination for customers, but how do you get past that? Well, I don't know if I want to spend the money on a sleep system. It's all
okay. Pause right there. Where did that question come from? What concept of the business did that question come from? Anybody? She's wearing a hat. What's the hat she's wearing?
Customer. She mentioned customer.
So she's wearing what hat? Retail. This conversation was not at all about that.
Okay.
Okay, so now you see the challenge. This is a perfect example of the challenge of talking to somebody about a business and their interpretation of the business is customer.
Right.
Okay. That's what's our biggest challenge. Our biggest challenge is helping people understand business. It's a business conversation is not the same as a customer conversation. A customer conversation is now about what's the value that you're adding to this person's life where these products are concerned. That's a conversation about the value based on what is their need and what is the value that you're adding with this technology. So it's a demonstration of value. It's never about money. Get that completely out of your head. This calls aligning with success, and I can assure you success is never about money, ever about money, never about money, ever about money. Success is a concept. It's a consciousness. Okay, so a success would, in this particular instance, would be about you solving the need. And if they're not interested in solving the need, then the money is just simply their excuse. Okay. So now if I was talking to a business prospect and I went through this process, that objection would not come up. Why would that objection not come up? Because here we are talking about how they're going to make money, and they understand implicitly and in the presentations of the concept that an investment of money is a requirement to make money. You have to invest a little to make money. So every entrepreneur knows that the investment is for the purpose of making money. In this case, in our case, it actually is a double entendre, if you will. If I was investing in a McDonald's restaurant, it's not because I want to eat a McDonald's restaurant. It's not because I want to sleep on a McDonald's restaurant or in one. That's just money that goes out to turn the engine on. But in NECAN, it turns out that the only money we really invest is money on products that you can consume, that you can use, that you can demonstrate, that you can sleep on. So we get that a little bit confused. Don't be confused. An investment in a business is with the idea of a return on that investment. That's a business conversation. An investment...
A very good point, because that has been a confusion, what you just said. Investing in the products versus investing in the business, because they are so overlapping. That's really a very important point.
Great. And so with the customer, then, an investment in the products is an investment in their well-being, in the solution to whatever the health crisis they may be facing or potentially facing. So let's keep that context. It's always an investment, by the way. It's always an investment. It's either an investment in their health and their well-being, or it's an investment in their business has an expectation of return on investment. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Mike?
Yes.
Hi there, this is Linda near Seattle.
Yes.
I do have an interesting question since you have all your vast experience. In your meteoric rise, when you first joined NECAN, I know you're very probably humble about it, but I know you had a wonderful quick spurt in rank. I think you were perhaps the youngest diamond the company would ever have. Am I correct in that at that time?
Youngest royal, yeah.
Yeah. What was your strategy for, I guess the best word I can say, what was your strategy for vetting out, say, customer-minded people, which is most, versus the small percentages of a business-minded people?
Oh my God, that's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question because the answer is maybe not expected. I didn't actually vet them out. I created a structure that they self-qualified. And not only that, but I sponsored so many people because I couldn't take the chance that I wouldn't find those leaders. I was the first in Canada to launch. Now, I wasn't alone. There were a lot of people who were sponsored that same month as I was in Toronto in Canada. But my goal, my intention, day one, was to be the #1 income earner in Canada. So I wasn't going to let anybody surpass that, which means what? If they were going to run 20 miles an hour, I was going to run 60 miles an hour. So I just got it in my head that I needed to run like a banshee and really sponsor a lot of people. So I sponsored 26 people month 1, 9 people month 2. That's 35 people in 2 months. By the way, you think that's something, huh? You know, in Latin America, they showed the numbers, and I posted them in the launch partners so the launch partners could see the kind of numbers they're doing in terms of enrollment. They enroll a ton of people. It's amazing the numbers that they're doing in terms of enrollment. Of course, of that enrollment number, a certain portion of those people are actually engaging as a business, and even smaller a portion of those who are really taking it on as a business. So that's what I did. What I did was I needed to ensure success by the law of numbers. I just knew I didn't know enough about this to know how to pick. So I figured I'd let them pick themselves. I would just sponsor enough people that they would fall into some version of this and they would figure it out. And in the meantime, what I was laying down was a structure to support those who wanted to build a business. So one of the first things I laid down was a calendar of events in Toronto. The calendar of events consisted of wellness previews in the day, which were more what we called executive briefings. They were 80% business, 20% product. And then we had a preview in the evening, a full-on wellness preview, which was 80% product, 20% business. And I did that twice a week, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday. We did one on the East End, one on the West End. So this was the calendar month one. On Friday, I did an executive luncheon where we charged $15 or something like that. We had, triangular sandwiches, just some snacks or whatever. But this was to capture that executive crowd, white collar crowd that likes to take lunch. And it was just to meet a demographic need. So Friday at noon, we had our executive luncheon. It was an hour-long briefing. Again, it was 80% business, 20% product, and people stuffed their face. And sometimes, by the way, we had a good lunch because nobody came. So we just stuffed our own face. So that happened too. But we put the structure in place. And then Saturday was a 3-hour getting started training. And that training was a quick start on how to get your basics done. But basically the stuff that we talk about today was getting them up and running and letting them know what the calendar was, how to make that initial contact. We obviously shared some testimonies, some business success, but day one, I had that calendar set up. And then we had a mid-month event, which is actually the third week of the month, a big event where a keynote speaker came in from out of town. So that was the lock-in. Mm-hmm. And so that was our calendar. And lo and behold, on the day of the lock-in event, we were shut down in Canada. We were not allowed to do business in Canada. We had some altercation with somebody doing something with respect to Health and Welfare Canada. And the next thing I knew, we were expecting over 200 people at our lock-in event, and we were not allowed to sell them a mattress or anything. So it was like, okay, so talk about meteoric rise. Well, that was putting a lot of water on that one. But what happened, just so you know, we had the meeting anyway. And we took orders anyway. And we placed those orders to be shipped to Buffalo. And we drove down in caravans to Buffalo, picked up those orders, drove them back, and delivered them. And we did that for 2 months while Niken got all those details sorted out and we were back operational. So a lot of people didn't think to do that. And a lot of people thought, it's over. This was just one of those, fly-by-night things. But we who stuck around believed in this and believed that Niken would figure out whatever went wrong. And so we were right. And I would say that's when I earned my $1 million check, was that month.
Wow. So Mike, what you're saying is what Ruth has been saying for all this time. We find him and wind him and see who runs. That's what you're saying. That's
exactly right. You just can't make somebody successful. You can show them the way and you can encourage them. There was a leader, Niken, used to say, you got to wait till they strip it out of your hand, the idea of leadership. And it never really felt right for me to hear that, because what I found often in nature was, for instance, the mothers, birds. Mama bird feeds the bird, feeds the bird, feeds the bird. Then one day she flies to a neighboring tree and just calls the bird and will not come. She just calls the bird. And if that bird wants to eat, guess what? You're going to fly from that tree to this tree. And that's how it happens. So in our business, that's servant leadership. It's like lead and encourage and create the space for somebody to step into that leadership and that role. And that was part of my meeting, by the way. Part of my meeting with the Latinos down south was, okay, guys, if you're Royal Diamonds, you're important. We know that. But if you don't make space for the next generation, you're going to be sitting here all alone one day, because you're going to put a lid on this growth. So you now need to think globally. Act locally, think globally. We need to get you creating a space for the next generation to move up. And they were like, wow, didn't even think of that. Because you get to the top of the compensation plan, you think that's it. No, it's not. That's just it for now. We're creating a new rank Hasn't been announced yet, but that's what we're doing. We'll create the reason to have it. Anyways, thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
And
Mike.
please look for the recording and share. Please feel free to share these recordings. They're for everybody who you feel might benefit.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.